Welcome. You guys having a good day generally so far? Good? Good. I have a few questions before we get started, and then I'll introduce myself and I'll talk a little bit about what we're going to talk about today. I need to try to learn a little bit about you first, because this session can go a number of different ways, and I want to really try to tailor it to what you guys are looking for. So give me an idea if you already have your own business. Could be just you, could be a bigger company. If you have your own business at all, just raise your hand. Awesome. Give me an idea if you don't, but you think you might want to do that. Awesome. I think that one of the things that is going to make today go really well for everybody, you guys got to help me. What I mean by that is, when I say, hey, do you guys have any questions about all the stuff we just talked about? And you will, ask them. The key to questions is if you have it, 5 other people probably have it. So if you guys could just try to help me, you all seem like brave individuals who aren't afraid of speaking up, just ask questions. It's really, really going to help everybody else get as much as they can out of the session, okay? Is that a good deal? Seems fair, right? All right, good. So, my name is Adam Jorgensen. I am going to be, I need to do these obligatory slides first. My apologies, before we jump into all that. Please silence your cell phones, just like a movie theater. If you have popcorn, please share it. How many of you guys are familiar with PASS outside of Summit? Okay, great. So about a good chunk of you. So I would recommend checking out everything that PASS has to offer. So some of the things that are really, really good, very, very cool about what PASS has to offer are things like user groups, virtual groups where you can get engaged online, training webinars, and pretty much all of it's free, guys. I mean, it's not a pretty good deal. The same content that you would get here from MVPs and authors and experts and Microsoft folks is available to you through a whole bunch of different ways as part of PASS. And so that's something that I would really encourage you to spend a little bit more time. If you're not really familiar with everything PASS can do to help you out, how many of you have been to a SQL Saturday, for example? Good. How many of you have been to more than one SQL Saturday? There you go. It's one thing to go. It's a whole other thing to go back, right? We always want that repeat. So please, please, please continue to look at, what are the kinds of things that PASS can do, because there's a lot that can help you really enrich what you're trying to accomplish. So a little bit about me. My name's Adam Jorgensen. I'm blessed to be part of the team at PragmaticWorks. We're a solutions integrator, consulting company, if you will, software managed services that basically is focused on helping customers do things with their data in the cloud. That's really what we do. Migrations, all that kind of stuff, new builds, and that's my day job. What I do the rest of the time is I help other people start companies. I help mentor and grow other leaders. There are some incredible people in this community that I've had a lot of privilege, and I'm so grateful to be able to work with. And so what I've done for this session is I've taken a good chunk of that and the success that we've had there, and tried to bottle it up for you in a format that we can get through in a reasonable amount of time. Sound good? Okay. I'm going to take a small technical break and see if my clicker will stop having a seizure. Yes. Success. All right. Why are we here? This session came about because I got so many requests from friends, people I work with, people at our customers, people in the startup community about how do I get out of this 9-to-5 that's just killing me? I'm just being honest, guys. I get it. And I said, look, if you want something that will be much harder than that, but different, let's talk about, what it means to actually create your own thing, right? And that can have all these different shapes, and it can look exactly how it needs to look for you. And that's the thing that's really exciting to me, right? I don't work 9 to 5. I work like 5 to 1. a.m., right? But that's my choice, and that's a big difference. I'm not on call unless I want to be, right? And I don't want to be, so I'm not on call. The idea behind this is to help you drive your own destiny. You've spent so much time being great at what you're great at. The trick is to figure out how to take that to the next level, and if that's a good fit for you, right? It's not a good fit for everybody, and it's not always a good fit based on the time in your life, and so we're going to talk about that. So you might be looking on building something like, a side hustle, something you're going to do part-time, something you're going to do some of the time, right? That you don't, you're not telling your boss to shove it and walking out the door on Monday. If you do, more power to you. Call me, I'll help you, right? But maybe you'll wait till like Wednesday, right? Give it a little time to sink in and settle, get a plan. We're going to talk about the best time to build a business, and that really is right now. The market's fantastic. You guys are seeing the things that are coming out around data, things in the keynote. I had an amazing meeting earlier with a bunch of folks from Microsoft and some other groups, and the technology that they're creating is so accessible that there really are roles and jobs that exist today that are going to really significantly transform. And that's not code for going away. They're just really going to transform. If you're a DBA, the way you do DBA in the cloud is totally different. It is. We have a customer that used to have 25 DBAs, and they had, a few thousand instances of SQL Server. They now have 60,000 instances of SQL in Azure for DBAs. And if you talk to those DBAs, they're like, yeah, we have a great job. Like we pretty much listen to audiobooks and write PowerShell automation all day. But those guys are super important because the rest of the DBAs all moved on to do things like data engineering. They're writing ADF code. They're moving things around, right? And so part of deciding if you want to think about doing your own thing is a question of, well, maybe I just need to be doing a different thing in my day-to-day. So it's not a binary decision. And it's not something that you want to take lightly. And so why is this session actually necessary? Because otherwise you could just go on YouTube and look at all the entrepreneur guys who publish videos on how you can make $1 million in like 3 weeks. And that's what they did, right? It all just worked out for them, I found out that there's one of those guys who just took all of his money, rented a Ferrari to make a video to make himself look super successful to try to drive download leads. I can tell you we're not going to talk about how to do that today. That is a terrible idea. It's just a great way to waste $3,000. Ferraris are not cheap. Rent like a Toyota. Show people you're responsible, right? I'm never going to hire a guy who rented a Ferrari. I'm going to hire a guy who rented a Toyota, right? So there's so many things that you need to think about. And so every year I keep about 5 to 10 entrepreneurs that I coach, right? And they do everything from sort of soul consulting to writing software products and ISVs and starting their own businesses. And what I see over and over again is the same gaps. Because when you come out of a corporate world, they're just things you don't have to worry about, right? You just don't have to think about them. Like, I talked to a number of MVPs who've gone out on their own, right? And hung their own shingle and said, I'm going to go do consulting, right? And within like a year, they're back somewhere in a job. And you're like, what happened? Like, well, I did this one project, and it was amazing. And I got paid, and I was like, I'm going to be a millionaire. And then I didn't get another project for like 3 months, but the bank still wanted my mortgage because they're not operating on your schedule. So you got to know things like, where's your customer pipeline going to come from, and how are you curating that, and how are you building your business? You can't just go, look, I'm famous in SQL Saturday, and I'm hot on Twitter, and I'm totally going to make a ton of money. That is not a business plan. It's not going to work. And so we're going to talk about the kinds of things that you need to think about. And so my goal today is to make sure you have visibility, right? We don't have time to do every single thing you need to know in the right level of detail, right? We can always do that later. But my goal is that you have visibility. So some of these slides you're going to see and you go, oh yeah, that makes sense. I would kind of think about that. And then some of these slides you're going to see and you're going to go, oh, I didn't think about that at all. You need perspective. You need context. You need to understand what's going to go well, and what's going to bite you in the rear end. I got a long list of those because mine's pretty chewed up over the years. So I'm going to give you the list of what bit me. And we'll start with that. How's that sound? So, today, we're going to talk about if building your business is a good idea. Like I said, may not. Then we're going to talk about choosing the right kind of business. Now, there are a million different types of businesses. We're going to focus on the 3 that you are most likely to start: consulting, managed services, or software tools. Basically building your own software, doing something with an ISV, something like that. The lessons you're going to learn across those 3, if you do something exotic and amazing that's a little bit different, they're all going to apply. But they're all going to fit into pretty much one of those buckets. We're going to talk about bootstrapping and validating what you want to do. So remember I told you before, maybe wait till Wednesday before you tell your boss, like, I'm out. Bootstrap first. Validate first. We'll talk about what that means and how you do that. Then we're going to talk about scaling that business. So once you've got it and it's working and you're making some money and you feel like you're getting in a rhythm, how do we pour some gas on it? How do we get it to grow? What does that look like? How do we avoid common pitfalls? They're all there. I guarantee you, there's a great book, and it's in the reading list that I'll give you guys, about something like the top 100 reasons startups fail. And as you read that list, you're like, well, they should have seen that coming. They should have seen that coming. They should have seen that coming. But you don't, because your head is down. Because you're so focused on getting customers or delivering or building your product, whatever that is, that you don't see that thing creeping up on you. And so when I tell you that my goal is to give you visibility and perspective, that's why. Because I want you thinking about everything. Everything. You got to think about everything until you hire somebody whose job it is to think about part of it. And we'll talk about how you get there. We're going to talk about some tips and best practices. I have a top 10 that I have pulled from, 50 or 75 startups that I coach and from all the other startup incubator guys that I work with. I pulled them and we whittled it down to 10. That's what you're going to get toward the end of the session. And then we're going to talk about what you should do tomorrow. So after you leave this session, what's next? What should you go do? How do you move forward if you want to move forward? How do you validate what you want to do? So we'll talk through that. And I've got some tools and resources. I've got a good support line for you. We're going to get you guys taken care of in the right way. 2 things. I think I said this already, but I want to be super clear. This is a longer session, so we will do a break. So I have the first kind of 40% of this, and I built a break in for you guys. So we'll do a quick bio break, let you guys get up, stretch your legs, all that kind of stuff, okay? All right, is building your business a good idea? How many of you raised your hand and said you did have your own business right now, or you're sort of starting it? Good. How many of you would do it again? Good, that's pretty much everybody. That's good to see. That's usually true. Most people would do it again. Because even when there's challenging times or even when you're stressed or that type of thing, at least you know you're building something for yourself. And that's what I love. When I'm up at 1 a.m. trying to solve a problem, it's for my family and for my partners and for my team. And I feel an intense sense of responsibility to drive that. So it makes it better. It makes it more fun. So you want to think about, why are you considering this? Why? Any of you guys who started your own company want to tell me why you did it? Yeah. There you go. I'm just going to call that more money. You wouldn't be surprised that that's probably the number one reason. Flexibility is another great reason. I will tell you that the idea that you're going to move to the Caribbean and work 3 hours from the beach from your laptop and make $1 million a year, you don't start there. It's doable. That's probably not going to happen by Christmas, right? We gotta build some momentum first, right? Is now the right time in your life? That's a real consideration. So I just had a daughter. Well, my wife and I just had a daughter. I did very little. This would be a terrible time right now for me to start Pragmatic Works. It just would. Traveling is hard. Going to see customers is hard. That's hard. If you don't have capital if you don't have a little bit of runway to pay your bills for a few months or a year while you get going, right? If you don't have a partner who's going to put money in, right? We'll talk about all that. You got to think about the timing. And so timing can affect how you bootstrap. Doesn't mean you can't start something, just maybe means you can't do all of it, right? I have a friend, he couldn't start his company, but he just started writing books about what he was really good at. He just started publishing ebooks because he could do that at night after his kids went to bed, spend a couple hours every night, write, figure out how to publish, figure out how to, drive some demand gen. And pretty quickly, after about 6 months, he had people reading the books and emailing him questions, and he picked up 3 or 4 part-time clients, and that was enough to float him. He was able to move on and go build something. So we're going to talk a lot about shaping the business to you into what you want, right? I'm going to give you the vanilla version and say, look, this is what this kind of company looks like, and this is the shape it should have, and here's where the deals come from, and here's what it looks like. And then we're going to talk about shaping it to you. The key thing to understand is what makes a successful business. And the real answer to that for everybody in this room is a business that does what you need it to do in the way you need it to do it. That's it. It doesn't matter if it's not as profitable, if yours isn't as profitable as his, or if his grows faster than hers, or if hers has more customers early, or if somebody gets their minimum viable product out faster. When you start your own company, you are the only yardstick. And we'll talk about the right mentality and some mental tools for entrepreneurs toward the end of the session because they're really important. But one of the things that is so important is understanding that you only have you as a yardstick. Until you get to a point where you're ready to wrap this thing up and sell it for $1 billion, then you got to worry about industry standards and things like that. Not as you're getting going, and frankly, not while you're running. If you're happy, you're paying your bills, your employees are happy, if you have employees, your family's happy, all those things are really important. So, the most common types of businesses that exist in data are consulting, which how many of you know what consulting is? I don't think I need to explain that. Good, thank you. You guys are smart. Managed services. How many of you guys know what managed services is? So managed services would basically be, I will manage your environment for you for a monthly fee, right? I'm not building out new things for you. I'm not developing products. I'm not doing projects. Although if you want to, managed services is a great way to get into a customer and then spin that up, right? Most big managed service providers ultimately buy a large consulting company. So when you're talking in the hundreds of millions of dollars size companies, most of the large firms like TCS or HCL or the biggest managed services customers, they own 5 to 10 consulting companies. Nothing creates more consulting opportunities than you managing everything for the customer. Because when there's a problem, who are they going to call and give that business to, right? And so we'll talk about that. And last but not least is software. You want to build a tool, you want to build a platform, you want to build something that makes Azure better, or build something that adds on to Visual Studio as an extension, right? That's super popular. If you go out on the expo floor, there's 8 exhibitors that all build developer tools. Most of those came out of somebody who was sitting in a cube, super sick of doing the same thing 100 times. They're like, wow, if I could right-click and do this, this would be way better. That's how our software company started. When my partner started it 10 years ago, we just sold it about 3 years ago, 2-3 years ago. It was all developer tools for BI developers. And it was great because they actually helped people with a real need. And we'll talk about how you figure that out. Those are the 3 main types of businesses that we're going to talk about for you guys. Now, I will be happy to talk about another one if there's something in particular that you guys are thinking about. So is there something that you're thinking about building or doing that you don't mind sharing that's not in that group? Okay. I was pretty sure we had it captured. All right. So we talked about fitting the business to you. What that means is asking yourself, how involved are you going to be? So I could do this a number of different ways. Let's say I'm a wildly successful philanthropist and I have lots of money sitting around. I could just put a few $100,000 into an account and go hire somebody who I know is great and incubate them and help them go build me a business. And I'll just take my cut every year, just take my profit sharing. right? That doesn't require a lot of involvement from me. I could do that while I'm doing something else. Usually that's not your first pass because you're usually not sitting on a pile of cash, right? But it's a great way if you know somebody who is. And we'll talk about finances and partners and things like that, right? If you know somebody who starts and runs businesses, it's a great way to find a partner, have them help make you successful and split the equity and have a good day, right? You have to think about if you want a lifestyle business where you're just going to keep this thing for a very long time and you just want it to bring in money every month for your family and you don't really have a desire to build something and then sort of sell it and cash out. Or typically more on the managed services side or the software side, do you want to build something to a certain point because you know that's kind of a good threshold. 4 to 5 million is usually sort of the low bar for that. You cross revenue of 4 to 5 million at least sort of 10 to 15% profitability. That company will sell in like 90 days, give or take, to somebody. It may be important to you that that happens. It may not. You may be looking at a shorter time horizon. You may say, look, I've got 30 years before I'm going to retire. I'll just build myself a sort of cash flow machine that brings me in enough every month, and then I'm happy with that, right? So there's lots of different ways this thing can take shape. Do you want to travel? Do you want to work from home? Do you want to build a local presence? Do you want to try to really enhance your local community and do something that really impacts your local community? Or do you just really not care where your customers come from as long as you get the customers? Both are totally fine. All of these options, they only matter to your yardstick, right? So we're going to take a look at these different models. And I've got, one of the things I have, all this stuff we're going to go through, you guys don't need to write this down. 1, you're going to get the deck. 2, I have a spreadsheet for you you're going to be able to download that has all of this in it. So I just can't present it in a spreadsheet because that would be a pretty awful presentation. Even worse than PowerPoint. Yeah.
Before you get into this, how would you categorize training, e-learning, online training? Would you say that's more consulting or research?
Yeah, it's a great question. So for those of you who didn't hear it, the question was how would you categorize like e-learning or training or sort of online learning? Pretty much like software. So it kind of depends on how you're going to do it. The big question is, are you getting paid? Are you trading time for money, or are you getting paid for a product? If you're getting paid money for time, that's consulting, no matter how you slice it. If you get paid for 8 hours of training to go out and see a customer or to do it over a GoToMeeting or Skype or Slack or something, you're basically trading time for money. That's great when you get started, but it doesn't scale. Because how many hours do you think you could work in a week? Maximum. 600? No? No, you can. Not yet. Not yet. You get there. You'll get there. So it's not that one is necessarily bad, right? You may say, look, for what I can get for training, I only really need to train 2 days a week, 3 days a week. I can spend the other days writing training, and that works out great for me. And that hits my bar, that pays my bills, my family's happy, I'm good, on my way to the Caribbean with my laptop. But if you're doing things like online training, that's more of a product, right? It's typically recorded. You want people to either subscribe to it, that's a subscription software business, or you want people to, download individual course packs, right? And then, we'll make sure I come back to this because we're going to talk about building your first product, and it's a great example to talk through. Okay, great question. So, what I'm going to do is go through your go-to-market, your sales, your marketing, building your team, your operations, your finances, for all 3 of these different kinds of models. And like I said before, my goal is to give you visibility and insight into the kinds of questions you should be asking yourself. You won't have all these answered today. There's no way. But if you're going to start something, you got to answer them all. You don't get to answer 30% of them and go, yeah, I think I have a pretty good idea. If I were to make this complete list, every one of these slides would have like 75 questions. But you can't do that. And we don't have all day. So when we talk about go-to-market, what we're really talking about is who is our audience? What's our unique market value? So if you're going to do training, great example, Why in the world would I do your training versus somebody else's, right? There needs to be a reason. And it could just be that you're the best in the world at what you do, and I should trust you, and if I learn from you, then it's going to be better. I can tell you that's weak tea, because nobody goes online and says they're third best. You guys ever seen that? Nobody's like, buy my pretty good training. They would fail the marketing class, I can tell you that. But there's always a unique market value. There's always a piece, a reason, right? Maybe it's you start in a vertical that you have background with. Maybe you start in a particular area that you have actual credibility in, right? I have a friend that teaches classes just on migrating to the cloud because he led a Fortune 100 company through a 3 cloud migration over 2 years. And the number of people in the planet that have done that is about 40. And he's the only one who thought, I don't need to do this anymore. I can go tell other people how to do it. And it'll be super relevant for like 3 years, and then my knowledge will age out, and I'll have to go back in and go revamp, right? That's okay. So that's what he's doing. Think about who your target audience is. Do you need to talk to executives? Do you need to sell DBAs, developers, architects? Who are you trying to reach? I can tell you, the higher up the org chart you go, the better chance you have of actually making money. It takes a lot of transactions for the money that a IT pro can spend to make a profitable business. A lot. Doesn't mean it can't be done. You create something that 10,000, 15,000, 30,000 people all want, great, you can make a ton of money. But that's a risk in the tools market, right? When you start getting into buying software tools. You also want to think about what are your products and services going to look like? So if you think, wow, I spend a lot of time with, data leaders and architects that are putting these solutions together, and I think my unique value is I seem to be able to go into the room and help them go from 5 whiteboards of chicken scratch to a roadmap. That's a valuable skill. People pay a lot of money for that. But you need to be able to quantify it. You need to be able to explain it to yourself. If you can't sit down, my rule of thumb is if you can't sit down with somebody who's not in your industry and explain it in about 45 seconds, you don't have it. It's not crystallized yet. So my rule of thumb is I have to explain any new product we're going to launch at Pragmatic Works to my wife, who is amazing, but not technically deep. And since we're recording this, that's where I'm going to leave it. She's in healthcare. She's a doctor. She's a physician. And around my house, we get a lot of laptop not working fix. Right? So if I can explain it and land it and it's crystal and it's clear and she understands the value, I'm like, good, I'm ready to actually start doing something with this. Half-baked ideas do not work. You guys ever had a half-baked brownie? It's awful, right? Your ideas should not taste like that when you show it to other people. Don't let that happen. So for consulting, your unique market value is you may have a skill or experience or something like that you're going to be able to leverage, right? It's credibility, right? Why do people trust Pragmatic Works to come in and do work for them? Well, they've got a referral. They've worked with somebody else, or they know our team, or they know our expertise, or they read a case study. Somehow we've established credibility with them that they trust us, right? And that works. But if you think about managed services, your unique value and your target audience is different, right? If I want to manage, let's say, the databases for a customer, my unique value better be, one, I can do it cheaper than the team they have now. I also better be able to do it better in some way, right? Maybe that's better automation. Maybe it's better insight into what's happening. Maybe it's better change control and compliance. Maybe I own a tool that they won't buy, right? So, for example, I'll give you a good example. So, in the managed service that we built, we have a partner that we use who does a lot of the management, and they went out, they did something really smart. They went out and used a bunch of capital, and they bought the 4 biggest monitoring and management platforms out there. SolarWinds, all the big ones, right? Ones that, as Pragmatic Works, we would never go buy because they're very expensive, right? So their whole value prop is, we own all this stuff. You guys just give it to us. You don't have to buy the tools. You don't have to buy any of it. Lower stress, lower cost. And their target is not Bank of America. They're not targeting the biggest enterprise. They're targeting small to medium-sized customers, credit unions, retail stores, your 30 to 150 million dollar size companies. Companies that are perfectly happy to pay $5,000 to $20,000 a month to have their entire thing managed for them. And that's their market fit. That's what you have to figure out. So for consulting, it's actually kind of straightforward. For managed services, it's kind of straightforward, but again, you got to really crystallize it. For software, this applies to all three, but for software, it's incredibly important. What is your average deal size going to look like? So in consulting, you typically have pilots and short-term engagements, and they're, $5,000 to $30,000. And then you have medium engagements where you kind of build out something over a few months, and they're in that $30,000 to maybe a couple $100,000. Then you have enterprise projects, which can be any number of amount of money, but they're usually north of $300,000, right? So there's these raw buckets. And so in consulting, you think, how do I get as many people into a pilot so I can move them on and continue to do work with them over time? In managed services, you think, how many people can I just get started with? Because once you manage a quarter of their database servers, they're probably, unless you really screw up, they're not going to fire you. You're going to ultimately get an opportunity to take on more and more, right? In software, it's a little more binary. They either want the product or they don't. And that's where you have to decide, do you want to do a thing like a one-time purchase? Do you want to do a lower subscription cost? Are you going to bundle anything in? Think about how many transactions it's going to take to support you. And if you're building the type of tool that every single IT pro is going to use, they're all going to pay $5 a month, right? Something like Pocket. You guys ever heard of Pocket, the app? You save stuff to read later. So they have a feature in there that I use the heck out of, and it includes integration with things like Teams and Slack, stuff like that. That costs me $5 a month. I will pay that until they shut that company down. Because it saves me like 49 clicks on my phone trying to share stuff with my team. Super useful, super low tech, but very valuable. There's other things that, we've paid a lot more money for, right? You have to think about, at $5 a transaction, how many times do I have to clear that? What is your average deal size going to look like? So you really want to think through that and have a plan, especially if you're going to look at software, e-learning, anything like that. You want to make sure you know what that looks like. Marketing. By the way, everything I just said has nothing to do with marketing. Go-to-market is what are you going to sell and who are you going to sell it to? Marketing is how do we go find them and how do we make them want to talk to us about this thing? Make sense? So, who are your potential customers? So you thought about who your audience is. Are you going to go after enterprises? Are you going to go after individuals? Are you B2C? Are you B2B? Are you B2G? Do you want to go after government? Anybody think that's going to be a really good idea? Unless you already have a contract. Now, if you are carrying a clearance, this is my only caveat to that. If you are carrying a secret or top secret clearance, go direct to government. I'm not kidding. Not kidding. It's the most valuable piece of paper you'll ever hold in your hand. Come up with literally anything, the government will buy it, and they'll pay you. If you can't figure out how to do that, please call me. I would like to be involved. Think about who those potential customers are, right? So for a consulting company, think about, are you going to do work on Microsoft's products or Amazon's products or Google's products, right? Talk to Microsoft reps. Think about who they have. Be able to articulate, hey, I'm Adam, and this is how I can help. And do you have customers in this type of scenario, right? Do you have customers who need me to help them plan their move to the cloud that are stalled, right? Do you have customers who are having performance problems in their environment and need somebody to come in and help them point in the right direction? Do you have software customers that can't get their new software to run on the latest version of Microsoft products? Think about who and what kind of customers you want to attack. Because you can't just say everybody. Well, anybody. Everybody would need what I'm offering. Fine. Open the phone book and look for everybody. You can't. It doesn't work. You got to have a target. Then you got to figure out how you're going to connect with them. Where do they live? Do they live at events? Do you need to get a booth? It's going to be kind of expensive. I think about that. Do they live online? Can you reach them through LinkedIn? Can you reach them through social ads? Less expensive, but hard. Just because you guys probably see a pretty good amount of ads every day, right? It's terrifying. I have a conversation with my wife, and Alexa's already told Google what I said, and they're already serving me an ad. Makes me really nervous. My wife's like, do you think we should turn off the Alexa? I'm like, no, I don't care. Then I would have to turn the lights on and off with a switch, like forever ago. I couldn't just tell it to turn the lights on and off. Yeah, I like that. $20 clapper. Yeah, amazing. Wakes the baby up. Okay. How are you going to create leads from that audience? Once you find them, so you found their Facebook group, you found them on Instagram, how are you going to find them? How are you going to connect with them? How are you going to make sure they know who you are? Guess what one of the best ways is? Speaking to them. Find a way to get in front of them. The first year we started Pragmatic Works, I did 85 speaking sessions in the first 12 months. That's a lot, yeah.
What'd you focus on?
Our main focus at the time, so our very first product, and this is probably a good example, because it's a product I would never ever recreate, but it's great for incubating. So we started Pragmatic Works, a data and BI company, in 2008 when people hated data warehousing, and then the market crashed. Home run. And what we did was we came back and we said, okay, how do we break through this idea that data warehousing projects are like billion-dollar endeavors and wastes of time? So we made a bet with our customers. We released this thing called a Quick Start, which was a 1-week, fully functional, end-to-end data warehouse prototype. And we guaranteed it in 5 days with a demo on Friday for a fixed flat rate. Yeah. So we talked a lot about how you can achieve that, right? We talked a lot about maybe don't take 6 months to write all your ETL before you write a report off of it to see if it's actually what they want, right? We delivered, I don't know how many we delivered total. I know I delivered in the first 2 years 90 quick starts, right? They were about, I don't know, 15 grand a pop. And that ultimately got us into a couple of decent customers with Microsoft where we got an opportunity to pitch on a bigger project, which we did. We undercut HP by a massive amount of money. The night before they were supposed to close that deal, I think they were at Ruth's Chris, clinking the wine. I'm not kidding. And we did that first project. It called for 8 people. We had 3. We hired 5 people in a week. Did the project 3-4 months. They're still a customer, and that was basically our funding. We went. We hired some more salespeople and went. And it's been perfect and smooth sailing ever since with no problems. So, yeah.
So you said 15,000. Was that a cost of quick start to your company?
No, to the customer. Flat rate to the customer. T&E, everything. We just lumped it all in one price. Make it super accessible for them, as low friction as possible. So one thing you'll find when you work with partners like Microsoft or AWS or other vendors in the field too is their focus is not you. Their focus is just making their number. It's not even really their customer. It's just making their number. And so you can't give them anything that's complicated. It has to be like, we're going to sell this. This is all there is, and it's this price. And this is what you get, and here's a data sheet and an email I already wrote for your customer that you can send to them that doesn't look like I wrote it. It works, I'm telling you. So marketing is not just about going out and saying, look at me, I've got Facebook ads, and I've got LinkedIn ads, and I've got a YouTube channel. I don't know how many people are like, oh man, I'm putting so much content on YouTube and getting no leads. I'm like, okay. That's like blogging and getting no leads. There's a lot of people on YouTube, but how do you know? How are you going to turn them over? You have to have a plan for that. So with managed services, it's pretty much the same type of customers. They just have a little bit different need, right? They're probably trying to figure out how they can use their existing staff to grow and do new projects, when in reality, they're spending too much time managing the environment. So typically, one of your first managed services offerings is a fix, like a triage and an assessment, and hey, give me 30 days and I'm going to fix all 70 of these things that your team created a train wreck in your environment, right? I've noticed you guys haven't restored a backup since Reagan was president. We should do that. We should give it a shot, right? The old college try. Being able to do that and create clarity and confidence for customers, huge, huge. You want to think about when you're marketing and when you're building your first product, you want to be on the other side of the table. You don't know how many ideas that I've had, like running through my neighborhood trying to work out. I'm like, this is the best thing ever. And I get back to my desk and I start applying my own, like, would I buy it? What's the value? And I'm like, damn it. Forget it. I just throw it away. We try again. Most of your ideas will not work. That's not bad. It's not bad. It's okay. You want to have as many ideas as you can so you get to one that's actually really good. And the way that you do that is your ideas are all informed by the visibility that you have, which is what we're trying to do today, right? When you talk about software should solve a problem. That's it. That's it. Find a problem, build something, solve it. Your entire market strategy is basically done. Make sure you're solving a problem that a lot of people have. Candidly, we built a product many years ago that solved an amazing problem that nobody had. It did not go well. So it's on the shelf somewhere. It happens. Now, ideally, you validate and bootstrap that idea before you get too far down the path. And that's one of the times when we didn't do that because we got really excited about our idea. And we were like, oh, that's amazing. Man, we're going to crush this. Oh, wait, nobody wants this? Okay, we'll talk to you later. Now, how many of you think, as president of Pragmatic Works, how many of you think I spend most of my time in marketing? How many of you think I spend most of my time in sales? Since that's the slide that's up and it's very leading. I spend about 70% of my time supporting our sales team. Not doing demos or having deep technical conversations with anybody. I have much smarter people than that, and they don't want me to do it anyway. I'm talking to customers about what's blocking them. Because when you have a consulting conversation or a managed services conversation, not a software, but the other two, the whole fact that they're talking to me means they have a problem that they either can't or won't solve. Right? Otherwise, why am I there? Why are we even in this beige conference room that I flew to? Why are we there? There's a problem. They didn't just find me on LinkedIn and go, wow, that's a really thought-provoking article. I got to meet this guy. That's not how this goes. Our sales team called and they said, you know what, actually we are trying to solve X, and if you guys have a solution for that, we'd love to talk. So that's my job. My job is to go in and explain to customers and create clarity and confidence. And that will be a huge part of your job. But in order to do that, what do you need? Customers, or at least potential customers. And so when you're building your business, you have to think about, what does your sales motion look like? Are you going to find a partner that comes from a sales background that you guys are going to do this together and he or she are going to go out and work on sales while you focus on sort of the delivery and the marketing and the credibility side with your expertise? You're going to be able to balance. Are you going to have to do that on your own? Every which way can work, but you have to have a plan. You have to have a plan. You should absolutely not start a business until you know how you're going to get sales. I wasn't going to ask. So you need to know who's going to buy it, where they are, and how you're going to get to them, and who's going to reach out to them. In consulting, you can't just send a salesperson to go close a big deal. Anybody know why? You can have the best salesperson in the world. What can they not answer any questions about? Technology, which is kind of the thing, right? It's basically the point. What? Then you hired the wrong salespeople. So he said they will answer the question, which is true. Yeah, I run into that a little bit on occasion, but I just tell them to say Kubernetes. Because every customer I have wants to do Kubernetes, and most of them are still Googling it to figure out what it is. So that's a good one, right? You just give them a pat saying. No, I think you got to think about what kind of technical or business support is your sales team going to need, right? I mean, if you're doing software, who's going to demo the software for all of these customers? Is a salesperson going to demo it? Maybe. Maybe it's a relatively straightforward software. The salesperson can handle the demo. That'd be great. Think about that when you're building your product. Don't build a product that's impossible to sell. If it takes 8 people to convince a customer to buy your product, not good for a startup, unless you have a very rich sponsor. People are very expensive. They just are. It's not a bad thing. It just is what it is. So as you scale, that'll be one of your biggest costs. So they have to be highly leveraged. They have to be creating a lot of value. Part of the way that we keep partners in our business really focused and motivated, since day one, none of the partners have a base salary. I have no salary, no bonus. I'm 100% commission based on what we sell. So if we sell and we grow, awesome. And what that allows us to do is take that off the table and reinvest in the business every year without having to go outside. Yeah.
I came a little bit later, but do you own the company or are you?
I'm one of the 2 founding partners. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is yours public or?
Our Pragmaticworks is private. Yeah. A couple of the other companies we've sold in the past have gone on to become public as part of their new ownership, but our company's private. Yeah. So you need to think about not only who's going to sell it and how they're going to sell it, but what percentage of deals do you expect to close? Do you have to talk to 100 customers to get 5 deals? If so, those better not take 8 hours to have those conversations, right? If you're doing like online training, for example, that should be pretty transactional. You want them to be able to self-serve a lot online and watch demos, and you don't want to have to put somebody on the phone with them to go, oh, and this is our training product, and let me show it to you, and let me walk you through it. That whole experience should be online. They need to be able to self-serve before they pull your time in, right? So that they can create a lead, they can download a trial, they can do something there, right? Which helps them move. On the software side, typically you're not going out and meeting with customers. Typically what you're trying to do is do a lot of really smart marketing and help make sure that your web presence and that you're creating conversation around the problem that you're solving, right? Hopefully, you've built a product that people already have recognized as a problem that needs to be solved, right? Like, there's no shortage of database performance products. Why do you think that is? Lots of problems. And lots of people don't have time to go sit through a pre-con every 6 months and learn all the new things. They're like, look, let me just pay for something that's going to tell me the problem. I don't have time to diagnose it. People will buy software that gives them back time, lowers their stress, and increases their feeling of security or confidence in their environment. Find something in one or all 3 of those, and you probably have a very good start. Look at the most successful products or the ones that you might even use in your environment, and I guarantee you they're ticking those boxes. Because they have to. That's the only reason people transact. The other thing I have on the reading list for you guys is there's some great books on just human psychology and what people buy. It's really important to read. Because there's a lot of stuff they don't buy. They want it, they like it, they'll engage with it, they'll follow it on social media, but they will not swipe that credit card. It just won't happen. And so we got to stay away from those things. Now, we talked about people. What does your initial team look like? Is it just you? It could be. I'm very grateful to my partners. They were smart in a way that brought the right group of people together with the right set of skills and the right ability to focus on different pieces of the business. And we were able to create a product that would get enough cash flow coming in. Yes, at one point we had a whiteboard in the office with everybody's like monthly bills, and we were allocating money as it came in. Sometimes that's what you got to do. Yeah.
How'd you meet your partners?
So I got introduced to Brian, who's our CEO, through another CEO at Toyota where I used to work. So I left Toyota, and then he called me in and he wanted to bring me out of the opportunity I left for and hire me in. And it wasn't the right fit. And he said, hey, I really think that you should talk to Brian. I knew Brian socially, through the community, and he founded SQL Server Central, right? So a lot of people knew who he was. And he'd been really successful with that. And he'd done work for us at Toyota, actually, as a contract, as a consultant, right? He'd done a great job. And he said, hey, I think you should reach out to Brian. He's starting something really interesting, and I don't think it's off the ground yet, and you'll probably be interested in it. And I said, look, man, this was years ago. I said, I just got engaged. I bought a house. I just bought a dog. Like, I don't need a startup. I'm going to get a job. I'm going to get a job job that pays me every 2 weeks, no matter what. And he said, well, just talk to Brian. And I'm like, yeah, okay. I didn't call Brian. 3 hours later, Brian called me. And he said, hey, I've got this thing, and it's really exciting. And if any of you guys have ever met Brian, he's got tons of energy, and he's super engaging, and he's great to talk to. And he's like, I'm coming down to West Palm for a customer meeting. To this day, I don't believe there was a customer meeting. I think he just drove down to talk to me. We had a 2-hour lunch, and he's like, look, let's just give it a shot, right? Let's see. I'm like, okay, let's do it. He talked me into it. And so we did, and we built out that quick start offering, and we did 4 or 5, 15 of them. And then we had nothing for 4 months. Bank was coming from my house. Nothing. And I'm like, look, man, we got to do something. And that's the day we got introduced to that customer that we took from HP. And to this day, that's a huge part of the legacy of our company. Yeah.
Follow up, what'd you do for the 4 months? When you hit the gap.
We're going to talk about that. Good question, though. So the big challenge we had then was we didn't have a complete team. We had a partner who had sales background. He's a great sales guy. But at the time, we had software tools, we had training, and we had consulting, and we had one sales guy. Not enough. Not enough to drive, right? So our team was imbalanced, and we weren't at a place where we could add people, right? So it was sort of a mixed bag. So Brian and I jumped in and started pounding our networks, and we ultimately created enough opportunity out of that, right? Which is not a long-term solution, but it was enough to get the engine restarted. How are you going to pay that team? Here's my advice about equity. If you're starting a company, only allocate no more than half of the equity out of the gate. Because down the road, the chances of the team that you start with being the team that you finish with are almost zero. Almost. We are very rare. We have 75% of the original team, and we only don't have one of the gentlemen because he retired. So most of the time, somebody leaves, people fight. Partnerships are like marriages. And they can go really well, and they can be amazing for a very long time. But just like a marriage, if you have 4 people in it, it's probably not going very well. So you can have some challenges. And so you don't want to be in a position where you're like, oh man, this person owns half my company. How do I extricate them from my life, right? You want to think through that, right? If you're going to bring on partners, spend a little bit of money, get a good corporate lawyer, spend $2,000. It's about what it should cost, unless you're in New York or San Francisco, and talk it through with them. Have them write up a partnership agreement. Do not start a company with anybody without a partnership agreement. That'll be a really fun court case, and you want to avoid that. We didn't have that problem, but I know people who have. So you want to think about employment agreements and contracts. I'm not a huge fan of trying to lock your team in with really hardcore employment agreements. Most of the time, they're not enforceable anyway, right? That being said, you definitely want to have agreements around equity, performance goals, things like that as you add additional consultants or trainers or software developers, right? Our software company had a core group of people that own the product. That product's success was tied to their success. Pretty normal thing. And it gives you an opportunity to have a really positive and uplifting conversation with the team every 6 months or so when you get an opportunity to think about taking more of a share or making more of it from a bonus perspective or things like that. A lot of it just depends on what your cash flow is going to look like. Now, you remember earlier when we got started, I said, I have a few friends that are MVPs and speakers and very amazing people and amazing individuals, and they've all gone out and hung their shingle, and not so much anymore. They're back. This is a big reason why. I have one that didn't have a good system for taxes. Got a bill from the IRS for $147,000. IRS doesn't play around. They say, we would like $147,000. And you say, I don't have $147,000. And they go, wrong. So that required some life changes for them. We have others that didn't have a good system in place for payroll. So they were just sort of manually cutting payroll for employees, and that got screwed up. And then their employees got a letter from the IRS because the right amount of tax hadn't been withheld in their state. How many of you are experts on state-level tax withholding? Now? For your state? 2 states, but not 50, right? We tried to do that for a week. 1 payroll. And our office admin, who's an amazing woman, she came in and went, no. No more. Find a service. And we've used them all over the years, right? Some of them are stupid expensive. Some of them don't have all the right features. But they all do the important part. They pay your employees, and they report on the taxes, and they withhold the money, and they send the money to the government. Don't overcomplicate it, but you got to do the bare minimum and make sure that you've got it on track, right? The other thing I notice a lot of is people don't have contracts in place for their business. So they have an email agreement with a customer, and they go out and they start doing work. And they're like, well, it's just a small project. We can just do an email agreement. No. Have a standard statement of work that you use. It's not complicated. You can even build it on LegalZoom. If you really can't get there, I'm going to give you my contact information at the end. Call me and I'll give you a template. It's not that hard, and it will save your life. The other thing that you have to have in any agreement with a customer is what happens when the customer changes their mind or situations require a change in course. Customer says, I wanted that in Power BI, and then halfway through they're like, oh, I don't like that. I want that in Tableau. It is called a change order. But if your contract doesn't have a change order provision in it, you can call it whatever you want. You're doing it in Tableau. So there's a few of these basic things that you want to make sure that you have. And if you have questions about that stuff, send me a note. I'm happy to give you pointers. I have an amazing contracts person whose background, by the way, is not in contracts. He grew into this role in our company. And it's amazing. All of my senior staff they're totally dependent on him. They'll be like, oh, I have this $1 million deal, and is it going out today? Well, as soon as Mike says it's ready. Because Mike has the power. Very clearly. Mike has the most important job in the company. He makes sure we get paid. Most important job. He's more important than I am, I can tell you that. I could be gone for a month. When Mike is gone for a week, it's like, okay, which part are you watching? Has everybody got their hand on it? Don't overthink this stuff, guys. But have insurance in place. For software, you don't need as much insurance. For e-training, you don't need as much insurance. For consulting, you're going out, you need errors and omission insurance. You probably don't need a ton, but you need some. As soon as you start getting any normal-sized customer, they're going to require it. You're going to have to send them a copy of your certificate, and you're going to have to work through some of that. So just have it handy. Just have it done. Okay? If you have questions about that, we can always talk about it. All right. Almost done with this section of slides. So, last but not least are on your financials. How many of you who do have your own company today run off a budget that you sort of set once or twice a year and reevaluate? Okay, that's not enough hands. I saw about 9 hands for businesses. I saw about 2.5 for a budget. And look, I'll be transparent. We didn't have a great budget the first few years. We didn't. It was like, there's money in the checking account, right? Okay. That would have been the extent of the budget meeting. But once you have more than a couple of people working with you, you got to have a plan. And if you don't make a plan around your money, you're not going to make a plan around anything. And the reason that you budget is, you can call it whatever you want. You can call it budget, you can call it financial forecast, whatever you want to do. It's basically, how much do I think I'm going to sell, and what am I allowed to spend if I sell that? And do it in 3 levels. What if I don't make it by 30%? What if I hit my number? And what if I make it over by 20 or 30%? So that every month, when you look at your books and you look at your P&L, which, by the way, if you just use QuickBooks, it'll do automatically for you, you'll know. And be like, did I hit where I need to hit this month? Great, I can't spend as much next month. This should be common sense, because I'm assuming most of you are not homeless and you pay your bills every month, right? But we get to the office and we're like, oh, let's just buy that. By the way, no pool tables, no foosball tables, no ping pong tables, no arcade games. Please. Please. Every single customer where I've been in their office where they have that has been out of business in 5 years. I'm not saying those two things are connected, but it's a big coincidence. Microsoft might be the only place that I have seen that is not out of business, and they also have games in their building. Having a building is an entirely different discussion, which is a little bit out of the scope of what we're doing today. But if you guys are there, we should talk about it. You want to build a safety net. I'm a big fan of investing profits back into the business. What's the number one way to invest in your business? Making sure it continues to run. So just like ideally in our personal lives, we set a little bit aside for a rainy day, or for a tough month, or for that emergency bill, you got to do the same thing in your business. And you got to think about some threshold, right? Do you want to have 1 or 2 payrolls worth sort of set aside to make sure that you don't get to a Thursday and you have to send an email out to your employees and say, hey gang, I'm real sorry. It's going to be a tough weekend. Because I can tell you what's going to happen with those employees. They're not going to stick around to get the second email. And that's a huge loss for you. It's a huge loss, right? So build that safety net. It doesn't have to happen overnight, but build it steadily. Every time you get paid from a customer, some of it goes to the side. Every single time. Every single time. Manage your expenses. Nothing, we'll talk about this when we talk about scaling. But every 6 months, I go through our P&L, and I'm on a hunt for what I call just stupid expenses. And I find stuff all the time. I find extra GoToMeeting logins that we're not using, mostly because we don't use GoToMeeting anymore. But for some reason, we still paid $4,000 for it last year. That's money I'd love to get back. Think what I could do for my team with $4,000 extra dollars, right? At the beginning, yours won't be on that scale. It'll be that you got a little complacent and you're going to Starbucks every day before you go see a customer. And so in a month, the company spent $380 for you to have coffee. Also not a great spend. Not really driving your business. Money should be going in to build products, to support teams, and to acquire customers. That's it. So be on the lookout for wasted money. And that happens in every type of business. In every single type of business. By the way, which one, consulting, managed services, or software, which one do you think is most at risk for wasted money? At a relatively small scale, let's say like a 5-person shop. Software? Anybody else? Consulting? Anybody else? It's managed services. But here's why. Managed services, especially in a cloud era, is ripe for overconsumption of cloud resources. You spin something up for a customer, you don't automate it to bring it back down, one night. We have a customer who racked up, we didn't do this, thank goodness. This is actually how we got to be able to manage their environment. They accidentally racked up a $60,000 HD Insight bill over a weekend. That's a career-limiting move, by the way. $60,000. And they said, well, what's the ROI of you guys doing the managed service? I'm like, well, two things. One, you're immediately going to save $60,000 because that's not going to happen. And you can send your team to automation training. I'm like, I'm not trying to be a jerk. They just didn't know how to do it. It's just a gap. It wasn't that they were negligent. They got an error. They got a message that said their script ran and it shut down, and they didn't go back and check because it wasn't automated and there was no error handling and there was no secondary check, which is standard. They cost them $60,000, and you don't get to put that on a payment plan. So I did actually really laugh. They decided to pay it with a American Express Rewards credit card, so they picked up a bunch of travel points. I'm not kidding, which I thought was pretty great. Yeah.
So question about that with budgeting, as far as business, would you advise that using credit as a form of budgeting is a good thing to do?
So the question is, would I advise using credit, like a credit card, for example, or a line of credit, as funding, potentially, or to help float your budget? No. Not generally. Now, people have wildly different theories and strategies on this. My goal for you is that if it all goes belly up, you go get a job, you go home to your family, and everything's okay. So it's really about how much you want to leverage. Credit cards are the single most expensive way to leverage, unless you go get a 0% card and use that. The most you're going to be able to get off a card like that is maybe 10 to 20 grand, which goes real fast. And then you got to worry about paying it back inside a year because that's your benefit period, right? So there's just a lot of risk there. If you asked me cold, you wake up on a Monday and you need to go find 20 grand, I'm not going to get it from credit cards. I'm going to find one customer, even if I do the work at a severe discount, just to get a partnership, just to get a case study, just to get a reference. I'm going to find a way. Even if I want to do e-training, I'm going to find a customer to go do training in person and make that first amount of money. I'm not going to let American Express do it to me. So now, do I think things like corporate cards with rewards for things like travel expenses and things like that are a good idea? Absolutely, whatever you want to do. They just shouldn't be the primary funding mechanism. You shouldn't be spending money you don't know you can pay. Make sense? Okay. So, let's talk about growth pattern and exit plan, and then I'm going to give you guys a break. I see you shifting around. So, growth pattern. Consulting companies. How do consulting companies grow? What's the difference between a small company and a big consulting company? What? People. What's the most expensive thing you can put in your company? People. Great business model. I'm really crushing it. Now, that's why you see consulting companies do additional things like managed services where one person doesn't have to work 40 hours for 40 hours of pay. They can leverage, right? The growth plan for managed services is what? More of what? Customers. Customers, customers, customers. The secret to managed services, and I tell people this all the time. So one of the questions I get asked a lot after this talk, we get all the way to the end, and they're like, okay, so if you were going to start over cold tomorrow, what business would you start? I'm like, well, I already did it. We added it to Pragmatic Works. And it's managed services in the cloud. 100% all day, every day. Now, part of that is because I'm a terrible developer. So the idea of me building a software tool, laughable. Laughable. So that's not really in my wheelhouse. We ran a great software company, but I certainly couldn't have or wouldn't have built any of the things that we had, right? We had great people who did that. Managed services, especially in the cloud space, is a great opportunity to pick up 5 or 10 customers and pretty easily be able to bring in 5 to 25 grand a month. How many of you guys would be pretty happy making 25 grand a month? Right? That's not chump change. And that's the secret. That is the secret. Don't try to build Facebook. Don't try to build a $5 billion company. Just set a goal that's reasonable and attainable and go get it. Go build something. And our very first goal, we wanted to be able to invoice, in consulting, it's how much you invoicing, because that's how much you know you're ultimately going to get paid. So we wanted to be able to invoice $100,000 a month to customers, right? And we had a small team, we had a small office, and we had the software team and some training, we had all this stuff. We knew that $100,000 a month would pay the bills, put our little money aside, and we'd be okay. That's what we went after. We didn't go after 15 different things. We didn't try to launch 5 products. We just said whatever it takes to invoice $100,000 a month. And then that became $300,000 a month. And then it became $700,000 a month, and then on up from there, right? We could have just stopped. And don't think there haven't been evenings where we sat around with a beverage and thought, maybe we should have stopped. This would be so much simpler with three employees. But at the end of the day, we have an amazing team, and we're super grateful for them and for everything that we have. But your company should fit you. It should be what you want. And so if that's 5 customers that pay you to manage their cloud and their data environment for a few $1,000s a piece a month, which, by the way, is not very much money to those folks, right? If you want to do some simple back-of-the-napkin math, how much does a DBA make divided by 12? For a small company, come in less than that number. Doesn't mean it's good to go, but it means you're in the right ballpark, right? You're able to have a conversation that's ROI driven, and they'll get you in the door to talk about, hey, I have better skills, I have better automation, I can make this better for you. If you're twice as much as their current solution, you don't even get the meeting, right? So you don't always want to win on price, by the way. It's a different conversation, but price sometimes has to get you in the door. If it's something that's packaged, you have to be transparent about, how the pricing works. Think a little bit, this much, about your exit plan. Because right now you don't know enough to plan your exit plan. But the biggest thing you want to know, do you want to exit? Like I said before, are you building something that you're going to flip? Because you could build a managed services business, let's say, that makes $250,000 a year in revenue, get maybe 3x top line for that. So that's $750,000, maybe $1 million, and sell it to somebody. So you have to decide, would I rather run this business and bring in my $200,000, $300,000 a year, or would I rather sell it for $1 million, take that $1 million, and go do something else? Right? It's all up to you. The goals have to fit you. And that's what's really important. And so we're going to take a break. I'm here for questions. We'll do questions right after the break because I want to make sure everybody gets to hear them. After the break and after questions, we're going to talk about how you actually go about bootstrapping, right? So we talked about all the things you need to think about, right? And we talked a little bit about how. We kind of jumped into that a little bit. But we're going to go through those same categories and talk about how do you go about building that product? How do you build that sales team? How do you build that marketing plan? How do you do these things? So my goal is to give you kind of the top tips on how to do that. And then we'll talk about scaling, how to avoid problems, and how to get traction. All right. Bootstrapping your business, the how to get it going section. So we talked about all the things you need to be thinking about, all the things you need to be aware of. That stuff's all super important. That's great. Give yourself a checklist. Make sure you're thinking about the right things. But what we're going to try to do today, and I will forewarn you, this is a full day of the 2-day version of this normal class. We're going to get through it. And so I would love questions. I would love for you guys to tell me if there's something I go over too fast or something like that. Please, 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 I want to make sure you guys get total value out of this, okay? Is that a deal? Okay. We're going to talk about telling your story. You got to have a story. You can't just go, I'm smart and I fix problems. Or I built a thing and it's shiny. That doesn't work. Not most of the time. Only on Kickstarter. We want to talk about go-to-market, marketing, sales, building your team, operations, financials, and your growth pattern. Some of these are not going to be long topics. They're going to include me saying things like, don't waste your money, next. But there's a couple of key points in some of these topics that we absolutely need to hit, and I'm going to try to give you guys some resources and some tools to move forward with. So, the first thing you have to be able to do is tell your story, your company's story, the story of your value. have to be able to do that. We hired a new VP of sales many years ago. He's still our VP of sales. He's amazing. He's a great friend of mine. And I went on a customer call with him right after he got hired. I mean, like that week. We flew to New York to go see a customer. And the customer said, so tell me about Pragmatic Works. What do you guys do? And he sort of did an explanation. And in my head, I was like, oh my God, can I claw that back and redo it? Like, please, that was terrible. So and it was fine, and actually the meeting went well, and we were able to move forward with the customer, but we got downstairs, and he goes, oh, how do you think that went? I'm like, we really need to work on your elevator pitch. It's probably the third thing I've said to this guy in our entire relationship. I don't want you to think it made an impact, but 9 years later, he still brings it up to his sales team that the first thing I told him was that he kind of sucked. And I said, look, you didn't. You just used 1,000 words to say 11. It's not crisp. It's not crisp, right? There's an elevator pitch I say 100% of the time, almost identically, whenever anybody's like, oh, Pragmatic Works, what do you guys do? We help customers move workloads to the cloud, manage them, and support their team to be able to get the most potential out of those workloads. And they have a follow-up question. I don't need to explain our entire portfolio and everything that we've done, just enough to let them know what we do and why they should think about considering us. You've got to be able to do that. The other thing you have to be able to do is really understand your audience and how your brand interacts with your audience. And so one of the best ways to do that, it's really getting to the end of the day for me, is this thing called StoryBrand. How many of you guys have heard about StoryBrand? I am not a StoryBrand ambassador. I'm not affiliated with StoryBrand. We use StoryBrand. I liked it so much, now I tell everybody about it. What StoryBrand is a simple framework that's a worksheet that if you fill it out, you have completed the description of your brand and who you are and how you're going to help your customers. And it's created, there's a book, if you guys want to go get the StoryBrand book, but it's created by some Hollywood guys who realize that every really successful story follows the same exact pattern. They all do. Lord of the Rings, Star Wars. By the way, the entire StoryBrand book basically uses Star Wars as the example, right? Now, the whole concept behind StoryBrand is to reinforce this idea that most of the time, when you start to tell your customer about you or your brand or your product, who's going to be the hero of that story? You. Because you're like, oh, well, this is what I can do, and this is what Pragmatic Works does, and this is what my product does. Wrong. In every conversation with your customer, who should be the hero? The customer. So why don't we do that? Why are we always like me? Go watch TV commercials. Watch the difference between like an Applebee's commercial and an Apple commercial. Apple is all about what you will be able to do. Applebee's is all about their nachos. And there's a reason for that. Also, don't eat nachos at Applebee's. These are just life lessons that you're going to learn. If we have time at the end, and I don't know if we will, but if we have time at the end, I have an amazing Applebee's story that I will tell you. If we don't, I will tell you after in the hallway. So, StoryBrand. I don't know if you guys can read that, but you will get the deck. So if you can't read it, I apologize. But if you think about, how many of you guys have seen and or heard about Star Wars? Look, I just have to ask. So if I use phrases like Luke Skywalker and Yoda, you're not going to be super confused, right? Okay. You'd be amazed. You'd be amazed. So, the entire process of StoryBrand takes you through identifying a character. The character is your customer. What do they want? Right? Who is the hero in Star Wars? The original Star Wars. Luke Skywalker. Which character in Star Wars represents you? Who? Obi-Wan? Who else? Yoda. Why? Because Luke Skywalker is a whiny little punk. See, customer. Yoda goes, listen to me. And he gets him on the right track. And he gives him the right tools. And he gets his head straight. And he points him in the right direction. And then he supports him. And then he stays with him. Does that sound like things you should be doing? You are not Luke Skywalker. And if, I know. Just remember, Yoda can whip everybody. And when you think about how you want to talk about your business, you're Yoda. Yoda never just tells Luke, like, oh, just do this, this, and this, right? It's infuriating to Luke. He can't get a straight answer for 3 movies, right? He's like, how do I get there? And he's like, first we have to think about this tree, right? Like, there's no straight answer. Your job is to go create clarity. You're supposed to move them forward. You're the trusted advisor. You're the guide. If all you do is talk about yourself, nobody cares. Nobody cares. Honestly. If this was a 3-hour session about Pragmatic Works, you guys would have left at the break. I'm actually hypersensitive to using examples about Pragmatic Works just because I don't want it to seem that way. Because it's not relevant. What's relevant is what you can do and what you need. Because for the next hour and 20 minutes, you're my customers. And that's all part of it. See, oh yeah, you are sort of Luke Skywalker, actually. I was wrong. For the next hour. Make the best use of it. So, we talked about go-to-market and figuring out, who are these customers and where are you going to find them. And the most important thing you can do with your go-to-market, once you've established all that, because you'll have a good sense of that once you go through StoryBrand. By the way, if you can sit down StoryBrand and just knock it out in 20 minutes, you did it wrong. It took us 2.5 hours 3 times. Because we would get to a section where, because there are sections like, well, what are they challenged with, right? What are they trying to achieve? And if you put some lofty thing that doesn't mean anything in that box, you're wasting your time. You got to be specific. What am I looking to achieve? Better database performance. Why? What does that get me? What does a better performing database get me? Emotionally, psychologically. I'm trying to get more sleep. I'm trying to have less on-call for my DBA because they're already threatening to quit. I'm tired of paying overage tickets to my service provider who manages the databases because they got to get up at 3 in the morning. Be specific. Be as specific as you possibly can, and you'll be amazed how much clarity it creates for you, and then you immediately can create that for customers. Immediately. It's amazing how quickly that will turn around for you. The most important thing with your initial go-to-market plan, how many customers do you want as soon as possible? Your first X number of customers. So for software, for a smaller thing, it might be, I want 10 customers or 5 customers. You will learn more with your first customers than you will with all the rest. And your job should be acquiring customers. It's your only job. As the leader of this entrepreneurial venture, you have one job. Bring in money. What brings in money? Right. Customers, sales. Get customers in the door. Get creative. Find ways to do it. There's lots of really interesting ways to do it. You can find customers that here's the only thing I would recommend against. Don't do free work. Something that's free has no value. Right? How much swag do you guys throw out after you get home? All of it. Do you know how much swag is in my hotel room right now, not even going home with me? Because I don't care. I don't care. maybe when my daughter's a little older, I'll give it to her and she can play with it for like 3 days and then she'll throw it away because even my 3-year-old won't care. Something for nothing has no value. You go see a customer for a week for free, what happens when you want to charge them 5 to 10 grand to come back? That's a gut punch. They're not going to do it. You can start customers off with discounts that expire. You can start customers off with special rates or a free assessment as long as they sign that gets credited back. There's lots of ways to structure it to make sure that you do the most important thing, which is what? Bring in money. Okay? Marketing. Let me tell you. We have built 7 websites in 9 years at Pragmatic Works. Do you know how many sales we get through our website? 0. Nobody buys consulting directly through our website. So why do we keep rebuilding our website? Because at some point we all look at it and go, I don't like that at all. We should make that look better. And then we try to do it, and we go, that's a little better, but we don't have time anymore, so we're just going to finish it and stop. You know what that's called? Noise. Noise. Once you know where your customers are and how you're going to go get them, just do that. Don't do that and be like, oh, and we should also be blogging, and we should also be producing a bunch of YouTube content, and we should also be doing... No. You don't have time. My man up here already said he can't work 600 hours a week. He's not ready yet. He'll get there. He's going to move out of being Luke and go back to being Yoda, and then he'll be fine. Right? You don't have the time. Every hour you're going to spend growing an entrepreneurial venture has to drive the business forward. If it's not, wasting your money, wasting your time, wasting your effort. Now, I'm not saying you won't try some things and you'll look back on it and go, that wasn't the best use of my time. You will. Just don't do it again. It's okay. Just don't repeat the same mistake multiple times. Fail fast. When you're starting this thing, anything that takes longer than a week to validate, too big. Shrink it down. Cut it down. De-scope, 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 aggressively. Even if it's, okay, we're just going to try this Facebook ad and see if we can get 500 clicks. Let's just see if we can get people to click, not even convert. Let's just see if we can get them to click. If that's what you can do in a week, do that. If not, you got to find a way to de-scope. It's super important. Build campaigns that will reach your audience. Think about all the things that you hate in marketing and don't do those. I'm serious. Right. It's 99% of marketing. I can tell you, again, from my experience, the most valuable things that we've ever done, and again, this would be for more consulting and managed services. For software, I have a different answer, and I'll tell you that, are things that create value for my audience that they will actually click on and come through and look at. So for example, Microsoft recently took down the Power BI licensing calculator. Did you guys know that? It's gone. It's not on their website anymore. It's still one of the top search things on the internet. Because I don't know if you've noticed, but licensing isn't always everybody's strength. So we created one. They didn't change the licensing. They just took the calculator down. So we created one in about 2 days, and we put it up, and we ran some ads to catch all those searches. And we picked up a bunch of traffic and a bunch of leads. Right? Now, that won't work forever. They'll change licensing, they'll do something, they'll move something around, and that's fine. But you have to look for timely opportunities to connect with that audience about something that really matters. Right? We've built migration assessments online and things like that, right? We've also done those things, and they've taken like 3.5 months to build, and we finally killed them because I'm like, why are there 7 consultants working on this? This is the most expensive PDF I think we've ever produced in our life, right? Like, we didn't de-scope, and we should have. These are lessons, like I told you, from things that have bitten me, right? I'm telling you things that we screwed up so you won't. The biggest thing you can do with marketing is just cut out the BS. Don't do things that you're just doing to say, marketing. I sit down with my marketing director every 2 weeks. I'm like, what are we doing? And she'll list all this stuff. And I'm like, we don't need to do 30% of that. She's like, well, we do because we need awareness marketing and we need this and Microsoft requires this and AWS requires that. I'm like, the more people you get involved with, the more stuff you have to do to keep them happy. When it's just you and you're building your business, cut through the noise. Don't waste the time, just focus. Make sense? Good. Sales. Train your sales team to connect with your customers. That's one thing that Brian and I have always had a really good track record with. We're for some reason, customers seem to like talking to us. And so we try to help the sales team understand we don't go in and go, let's talk about your data warehouse, right? You got to go in and actually understand what the customer is trying to do, right? Now that's for consulting and managed services. For software or for tools or for e-learning or something like that, you want to have a slightly different sales cycle. You want to basically look at what are all the things that you're going to get objections about, right? Is it too expensive? Does it cover what I need? Can I do it in my own time? Can I download it to my mobile app? All the common things that you should be identifying as part of your go-to-market. And you make sure that those are eliminated on your website. You build a self-service walkthrough, a demo, a download, a trial, something that the customer can self-serve. That's a valuable thing, like that Power BI licensing calculator we talked about. Your trial, your download, your sample so that they can touch and feel and interact with is super valuable. So just get them to go through your explanation of it. There's tools, by the way, for your website where you can see how far down they scroll, where they pause. It gives you a heat map of your customers. We put that in and we realized this amazing explainer video we did, nobody clicks on. They don't click on it. They go right to the paragraph underneath it, which wasn't really written as well, and that wasn't converting. I'm like, I don't have time to watch this video. I can scan this text right here. So do that. Understand what your customers, how they're going to consume what you have, what you're putting out there. Trust me, whatever you think is right, it's only partially right. But it's not your fault. You can't be in everybody's head at once. You got to put something out there, monitor what they're doing, and understand what that is. As a person who's running the business, as a person who's growing the business, there's two things you need to be good at when it comes to sales. Getting mind share from your sales team for new products and offerings. So if you release something to your sales team and you're like, hey, this is great, and we're going to do a spiff and try to get the first 10 of these, that's great. Here's the commission. Average deal size is $20,000, and their normal average deal size is $80,000. Do you think they're going to sell that new thing? No. They're like, here's the thing you can make less money on. That's all they heard in an hour. Doesn't matter how many slides you put together. That's all they heard. I learned that the hard way. I used to do these amazing launch parties. No, they don't care. So we had to rethink it. Yeah.
So how do you balance, providing something of value to your customer, like you said, self-serve, or even like a calculated thing, and what you said earlier about not doing anything for free?
Yeah, so it's a great question. So the question is, how do you balance delivering something of value with not doing something for free, right? The thing you're going to give them that's valuable doesn't get them over the finish line. So if you have a software product, it's a trial. It expires in 30 days or 15 days, right? Ours used to be 15 days, which was great because then most people called to extend it to 30. We would almost always do that, but by then now they're talking to a salesperson, right? So now we have a lead. If you're doing something like the calculator, the report that they get gets emailed to them and to a salesperson. So a salesperson can reach out and say, hey, do you have any questions? Do you not have a need? Great. We don't want to push you, but if you need something or want to talk through it, let's talk about it. Right? So when I talk about doing work for free, I mean actually doing work, like delivery work. Like you wouldn't give 3 copies of your training software to a customer just to give it to them so that you can say you have a customer. You wouldn't do that, right? There's a way to work that out either with a subscription, discount, rebates to bring it down, but that they still have skin in the game. Customers with no skin in the game are bad customers. Customers who do not want to or refuse to put skin in the game are very bad customers. I don't have a section in here on firing customers, but it has to happen. You will occasionally fire a customer. and it'll be the best thing you ever did, and you will not want to do it, and you will agonize over it, and you will regret it for about 20 minutes, and then after that, you'll be like, oh, I feel so much better. Because you're going to realize, I'm not going to get another email from this person. It's great. The second thing, first thing is mind share. Second thing, you've got to know how salespeople expect to be comped. So depending upon the type of sales team you want to build and what you're selling, you may have what's called an inside sales team. So folks who work maybe out of their house, so they work out of a small office, and they're primarily calling outbound, maybe on software leads. This is pretty common with software, where they're calling outbound into as many accounts as they can to try to sign up demos for maybe you or a technical person to run through the solution and try to talk to a customer about it, right? The goal there is volume. You want to call 60 to 100 people a day per person and try to set up 2 to 4 demos a day, and then those demos create a funnel, and then ultimately you're hopefully converting and you're selling software. On the consulting or managed services side, you have more outside sales. So these are people typically who have more experience. They're going to need more of a base salary. They're going to need a little bit more of a commission. They're going to be expensive, potentially. If you can hire a really cheap salesperson, you're going to get exactly what you put into it. But not every expensive salesperson is good. So that's the caveat. Our rule of thumb is you have 90 days to create pipeline or you're out. You don't have to close everything, but we need qualified deals that you've created in 90 days at a particular target based on whatever your region is. Show me you can produce, you get to stay on the bus. And you'll be well compensated and we'll grow and it'll be amazing. If you can't, great, let's just part ways. Everybody's fine and we'll try again. But we limit our risk, right? We limit our risk. So your initial team, the thing that matters most about your first hires is that they can handle what they're about to go through. So if you're building a product, that's not going to be a 9-to-5 job to get that product out. It's going to be a pedal to the metal till the gas runs out or that product goes live. Yeah.
Just a quick question back to the salesperson.
Yeah, you bet.
In your experience, do you find that you get salespeople with experience in your niche, or do you find that good salespeople are good salespeople even if they never even know anything about technically what you do?
That's a great question. So just so everybody knows, do we need to get salespeople in our niche that know about our business, or can we just get good salespeople who can sort of maybe transition from selling something else? I would only go in my niche. So much so that, let's say it's a consulting company, I would want to hire somebody who sold for a consulting company. Now, that being said, let's say our company does data, right? Pragmatic Works is a data-centric company, right? One of the sales folks we hired recently came from a Dynamics consulting company. She's amazing. But she sold projects. She came from an SI. They're a Microsoft partner. She understands Microsoft funding. She knows how deals work, and the average deal size was pretty close to ours. That's close enough, right? If she sold Office for Microsoft, that's a bad fit, right? So if the deal sizes are similar, what you want is somebody who can talk about the same type of size, the same type of impact, the same type of value to a customer, right? If they can do that, picking up the solution is usually not as big of an issue. It's more about somebody who only sells $20,000 buckets or somebody who sells $1,000 software products is not going to be able to sell $50 software products very well because they're going to get pretty disillusioned. And they're not going to be able to sell very expensive consulting products. Make sense? Awesome.
Maybe another question for sales.
Yeah.
When would you think about hiring a salesperson? The very first day, or would you say, okay, I will start doing sales by myself, but like when I reach a certain level of employees or revenue, I need a salesperson?
So basically, when would you hire a salesperson? Sort of right away, or do you try to set a target and then scale to a salesperson? How much money do you have on day one?
Yeah, like that's what I'm saying. Like you start probably doing yourself. At some point, you say,
So if we take the tact of if I were going to start over, I would find a partner who's a salesperson. Because that's really the best of both worlds. That's somebody who can come in. Ideally, maybe they've been through a successful exit at another company. They have a little bit of money. They can go 6 months without, full paycheck type thing, right? They get some equity because of that. You guys work together and you go get your first 10 customers, right? You can put a little bit of an equity award behind that. The other thing you can do is because it's your first 10 customers and you have no overhead, you can pay that person a much higher commission than they would get someplace else. So they're highly incented to get those first 10 customers. Maybe pay them triple what you would normally pay them and just be upfront about that. Say, hey, listen, for the first year, if you hit this many customers, you get triple commissions. Because honestly, you don't have the overhead to worry about. You can just take the money out and whatever's left, you're good. Make sense? Yeah. Any other sales questions? I love these sales questions because it means you guys are thinking about sales, and that's super important.
Learn sales as an entrepreneur, if that's not your niche, you advise that every entrepreneur should learn a little bit about sales.
Yeah, so should every entrepreneur learn a little bit about sales? 100%. So I have a reading list that I'm going to make sure you guys get. There's 3 books on there about sales for entrepreneurs, and I would highly recommend them. However, unless you do sales day in and day out, you're not going to be an expert. But you need to know enough to call BS on your sales team, honestly. That's, you need to know enough to know if you're driving in the right direction, which you can. You can get there. That's not a problem. So we talked a little bit about this with your question, but compensating your initial team. Your initial team, they need to be in it to win it. Don't hire somebody that comes to the interview and they're like, yeah, this seems good. Nope. Goodbye. The best place to find your initial team is from your existing network. The best place to find your existing team is from your network and from referrals. Go to people you know and say, I'm looking for a salesperson who wants to step out. Do you know how many good salespeople feel like they can do more? The right salesperson is just focused 100% of the time. They're a money-making machine. One of my salespeople, she's one of my top 2 every single month, every single quarter since she's been hired. She's actually the one we brought from the Dynamics company. Every morning she gets up, she looks in the mirror, and she says, I'm a magnet for money and deals come easily. And guess what? I started saying it because it works. She sold me. You want to find that core group, but you don't want to overdo it, right? Sales is important, but if you need to build your product first before you find the salesperson, do that. You don't want a salesperson that doesn't have anything to sell, right? So timing is really important. We talked a little bit about equity before. Don't give all your equity away. Leave at least half of it in the bank. Just leave it there. Everything doesn't have to be split 50-50. Find people that are willing to work for a reasonable amount of equity, a reasonable goal. Initial partners, 20-30% of the business as a top end with performance goals to get there over the first few years is a great thing. You sell that company for $10 million, which is not, sounds like a big number today, but it's not. That person gets $3 million. I'll do a lot to get $3 million, wouldn't you? I worked pretty hard for that. Where are you going to get $3 million in your 9 to 5? You're not. So there's a lot of opportunity. Operations. Now, this is actually the thing I might hire. I'm going to say second only because I don't want to mislead you, but secretly it might be first. This is the kind of thing, if you have somebody in your network, somebody who's done a part-time payroll for a school, this doesn't have to be a full-time person. The woman who runs our HR and our operations now, she started with us 15 hours a week. While her kids were in school, she'd come in, she'd do the payroll, she'd do the books. She had all that basic experience. And because we weren't doing anything really complicated, we didn't need a CPA, we didn't need all the additional accounting that we have now. And for a few, maybe $700 or $800 a month, we took care of all of this. One screw up on that would cost 5 times that much. And so it doesn't mean that you have to hire a full-time person. This is not an equity person, none of that, right? Bring somebody in part-time to help you to take care of it. Just make sure they're on top of it. It's also easy to scale that. You add 5 or 10 more hours, it doesn't cost you an arm and a leg, right? Now, this is the one you guys are going to love. You need a lawyer. I know. It sucks. But the best thing you can do is find somebody local through your network that you know. You don't need to put them on retainer. You don't need to pay them every month. You just need to sit down with them. There's a few key things you'll want to get lined up first. And then you just want to have them on the other end of the phone when you need them. We typically need our lawyer about once a year for some random thing, either a non-compete, or we need to update a contract, or we're trying to put something in the SOW and we need to know if it's legal in Massachusetts, right? Lawyers should bill in increments of time. Shady lawyers bill in blocks of time. They should bill in like 15 to 30-minute increments. If you're getting bills by the hour, find another lawyer, okay? Start with your network. I guarantee you, if you have anybody entrepreneurial, anybody who owns a business in your network, they'll have one they trust. Take the referral. That's the best reference you can possibly get. All right. We talked about this a lot earlier, so I only have one other point on company financials. Your time is short every week, right? We talked about this. No 600 hours, right? So the last thing you want to do is spend time going, how did we do on our budget? Because you kind of know, right? You're going to have a gut feel about where you are every month. And I can tell you right now, 1 month, that gut feel is going to turn into a gut punch pretty quickly because you'll have missed something. You'll get an invoice a week late for one of your biggest customers, and you'll miss payroll. Pragmatic Works has never missed payroll, but I can tell you we were within an hour and a half of doing it once about 10 years ago. And it's a sobering thing. So you want to be on top of this stuff every month. And if you are, it doesn't take that much time. Our budget is bigger and more complicated now than it ever was, and it only takes me an hour and a half a month to go through the whole thing and make sure we know where we are. And if you have questions about doing this, if you want to be pointed in the right direction, let me know and I'll help you. It's not complicated, right? We just can't go into all that detail today. But it is something you really want to be focused on and you really need to grow. Just checking my time. All right. Let's talk about M&A as part of your business. So let's assume that you're all going to go out of here, be wildly successful, because let's face it, you know everything now. Right? What? Awesome question. Mergers and acquisitions. So basically, you might buy a company, you might sell your company, right? A great growth pattern is if you're doing really well, go find another company that does something similar or that does something new that you want to branch into, but you don't want to take the time to build it, and go buy them. That's great. You probably can't even think about that now. You're still trying to figure out how to grow yours. That's okay. It might happen one day. More likely, you'll get an offer from your new, very exciting, very profitable company for somebody to buy it. Generally, your first offers, always evaluate them based on your life situation. This is my disclaimer that's not on the slide. First offers will be low. Offers will come in rounds. And so once you begin to grow your business, you want to have a good idea of, hey, and what are sort of there's natural ceilings, right? So in consulting, $10 million in revenue is a natural ceiling. Something like 85% of consulting companies never go beyond 10 million-ish in revenue, right? And so companies that do and are profitable are very attractive because that company has figured out, for whatever reason, how to get past that, right? So people will come in and say, hey, listen, we'd like to buy your company. You have to decide if that's something you want. You know, things to think about. What's my job after you buy my company? Am I trading this nice paycheck and my team who I love and my day-to-day that I like and the lifestyle that I like for a big paycheck? Maybe. I'll do that tomorrow. Paycheck's big enough. But if it's just like 2 years of my salary, no, that's probably not a very good deal, right? So you got to look at those offers and think about, what do you really want to do? And so it's a good idea to think about and do a little research on what's normal in your industry. Once you're running and once you're up and you're feeling good, understand if somebody comes to you with an offer, is it real? Or are they just trying to make a deal, right? Are they trying to do a bargain? There's lots of bargain shoppers, lots. Microsoft offered Pragmatic Works some incredibly small number in the 5 digits for the software company like a year after it was founded. It did not sell for 5 digits. That's all I can tell you. But, of course, there was a lot in between, right, to get it there. But you guys are here. You're willing to put the work in. You're going to be good. What do you do if you're not growing? So you start, and you're running, and you're like, this is amazing. And then you're like, I'm still running, but I'm not going anywhere. And typically you'll realize you're running even harder and harder and harder and faster, and you're not going anywhere. The number one thing you can do is just stop. Take a couple days and leave the business behind. If you have a partner, if you have somebody else who helps you run the business that you trust, take them. Doesn't matter if it's at a coffee shop locally. We go to a farm with no cell reception because it keeps everybody real focused. I'm just mean like that. And just take it apart. Take it apart. You do not fix a growth problem by calling an audible in the middle of the field. You won't. Something's not right. And it could be that 90% of the time, if you were growing and you're not growing anymore, there's an external factor that's off. 90% of the time. But it's your job to figure that out. It could be that your customers' needs have changed, right? If I sell something that's primarily an on-premise type solution, I'm not going to grow at the same rate I grew at 5 years ago, right? Why? Cloud. Because customers want to be in the cloud. I'm selling the wrong thing. But what if I convert that to a cloud thing? Probably back on track, right? As long as it's valuable and customers want it. Maybe we're targeting the wrong demographic. Maybe we're targeting the wrong segment. What if you have, in the past few years, if you have a solution that only targets retail, how do you think that's going? For those of you saying, what's retail? Those are stores where we used to buy things. One used to be called Sears. It was great, actually, if you needed tools, and that was pretty much it. Or if you wanted like family photos taken, that was always sort of a weird additional thing that they had. I say that as a person who has many of those photos from childhood. They're always very flattering. If you're not growing, it's typically something external. Either that or something's really broken internally. Now, we've been through periods where our sales team, for the life of them, just could not produce leads. They couldn't produce new business for like a quarter. And this was about 5 or 6 years ago. We had a primarily inside sales team. You guys remember I talked about inside versus outside? Because if you remember, we started as a software company. We had a primarily inside sales team with a less experienced sales crew that was more focused on just sort of, we call it dialing for dollars, right? Just calling customers, trying to generate leads, and talking to them about everything that we do. And that had worked up until that point. And we had a quarter where we closed exactly 15% of what we should have closed. And I had to let 8 people go. How's that? Let me tell you. I pulled everybody into the conference room, and everybody looked real sad. These are the people that the leadership team. I said, none of you get to be sad. None of you. We just had to send 8 people home to their families to tell them they don't have a job anymore because we screwed up. They didn't screw up. We screwed up. Somewhere we took our eye off the ball, and something got dropped. And it's never going to happen again. And it hasn't. But we made some pretty significant changes in the way that we run sales. We used to have 2 sales teams. We used to have one that sold through our channel, like through Microsoft and Amazon and other partners, and then we had one that sold direct to customers. Got rid of that. It was complicated. It was noise. We combined them. We kept people that produced. We got rid of people that didn't produce. Seems like a pretty normal thing that we could have done before, right? Just hadn't been done. Over the next year, we kept the best inside people, and we moved the rest of the roles to outside, focused on regions where we had the most opportunity. We took a pulse, we stepped back, and we said, what should we be doing that we're just not? And let me tell you, 90% of the time, that'll fix your growth problem. It's even better if you look at it every month and you don't get so heads down and myopic that you wind up having to have that. But I can tell you, it won't happen again, because I'm not going through that again. And I'm not going to let anybody else on our team go through it again. And so that's a big part of the reason that I focus on this as its own topic. Any questions on bootstrapping before we talk about scaling? Anything we talked about in the last 45 minutes or so? All right, let's talk about scaling. So you're successful, you're growing, you've got a handful of customers. Let's kick it in. Scaling your go-to-market. How do you guys think we scale go-to-market? You're selling a thing. How do we do more? We sell more things. I told you, it's not complicated. If you have online training that you sell, create some more classes. You've got existing customers. Go talk to those customers and say, hey, I'm getting ready to create my next 5 classes. Which ones, if I create, will you buy tomorrow? Newsflash, go create those. Then they'll buy them. That helps fund the next thing, right? Let me tell you, I'm telling you, this stuff sounds like, C-spot run sometimes, but we all screw this up. We all get in this world where we're like, I know what we should do. Have you talked to the customers? We'll show it to them when it's done. They're gonna love it. It's gonna be amazing. Yeah, sometimes. I can tell you for sure that as you look at scaling your go-to-market, go talk to your customers. Go learn from them. The easiest people in the world to sell to are people who already gave you money for something, which is another reason that you don't do work for free. So if you're doing consulting, think about what's something I can have these customers maybe pay me to do for them every month. How can I add a bit of a subscription flair to that? What can I do for them? Can I give them a little bit of mentoring or training or lunch and learns or things like that every month? What can I do for them for a small amount? If you've got your first 10, 50, 100 customers, think about what would it be if I could get an extra $500 or $1,000 from those customers every year. If you have 100 customers and you can get $1,000 more from them every year, how much more money is that you get every year? Come on. We have a bigger problem here, guys. Anybody? 100,000, thank you. 100,000 seems like a pretty good scale number, right? Especially for something that's just started. Those are the kinds of opportunities you have to capitalize on to bring capital into your business, especially if it's something that you can rinse and repeat for all your customers. If you're managing performance of database servers for a customer and you give them the opportunity to subscribe to your database training that you just recorded for X amount of money a month, you only have to create that once and you can sell it to all of them. And guess how much of your time it takes when they watch it? 0. Look for opportunities to create products that complement and don't over leverage your individual time. Does that make sense? Scaling your team. Man, this is probably the place I have the most conversations. First bullet, open the right seats on the bus, put the right people in them. When you first start, your bus is going to be this long. It will be a short bus. Not in a derogatory way. You just don't have that many seats. The rule we have inside Pragmatic Works, every day you earn your seat on the bus, or you get left when the bus leaves. Every day I show up and my focus is how do I earn my seat on this bus. My job primarily is unblocking and accelerating for everybody on my team. My sales team, their job is to go out, talk to customers, create opportunities. My delivery team, they go out, they do great work for customers, and they hopefully keep them coming back. Training, they educate customers and make them feel empowered and confident. That's how they earn a seat on the bus. You lose your seat on the bus when you start making a bunch of excuses about why the thing you're supposed to be doing isn't getting done. Now, in every new business venture, somebody's got to be the hard ass. Because somebody's got to make the tough decision about when something's not working. And a lot of times that means that somebody is not a right fit. Good news, that's you. You might not like it. That's okay. Don't start a company. Just stay in your 9 to 5. If you want everybody else to make decisions for you, let them. That's okay. There's literally nothing wrong with that. You just have to be aware that if you're going to grow and scale, at some point, you're going to have some of those conversations. Sometimes it just doesn't work, and you can't let it go. This is not Frozen. A lot of people are right for a season. Some people are going to be a great fit the first year you have a startup. And then when you're like, okay, guys, now we have 10 salespeople, and so we have to have some process, and we got a CRM, and you got to log your deals in Salesforce or Dynamics. That first person who was the cowboy or the cowgirl who run and gun and got you those first 50 customers but did it all on the back of a bar napkin is going to really have a hard time. And you're going to have to decide, can I help this person evolve into what we need, or is it time to let them go be amazing for somebody else? These are not always easy decisions. But the worst thing you can do is drag that decision out. 90% of the time, you already know what it is. You're not making a decision because you don't want to have the conversation. Just get it done. Just get it done. Everybody will be better off, I promise. What kinds of roles will scale first? What do you think? Sales? Anybody else? Why sales?
Because they're building your funnel. If you've got the pre-trained, then now you need your developers or engineers, whoever's working the solutions.
Great point. If you end up spending more money on building the thing than selling the thing, you're going to run out of money. And what's your job? Make money. So that seems like you wouldn't be doing a very good job, right? Right. Sales will typically scale first because you want to build more funnel. Anytime we go into a new region, we scale sales first, right? If you need, let's say it's consulting or managed services, and you need a technical expert to support that sales team, to get on the phone and say, well, here's how we keep your data secure, and here's how we manage it, and here's how our monitoring tool works, and let me walk you through that. Stuff a salesperson can't do, one of those people can be leveraged across multiple salespeople. I can tell you right now, that's the role you're going to scale last. Because even though they are very important to sales, they are hands down the most expensive, and they can scale. They can scale. You can optimize demo schedules. You can optimize a lot about that process. You can force the sales team to qualify leads better. Because initially what's going to happen is every single customer call will have a salesperson and a technical person. And that call is going to go, hey, have you heard about us? Why is there a technical person on this phone call? Why is this very expensive person also paired with this other person, and now we're doubling the cost of this entire call, and we're going to do that 100 times today? No. No. It'll also burn out your technical people. Yeah.
A lot of times now, I know when I talk to software vendors, so on and so forth, they don't even have a salesperson. The first one's just a discovery call that's probably a much lower level person that's even just getting into, then it will qualify for interested, then it will.
Right. So a lot of times there is a layer even before the salesperson. So one of the things you can do, especially if you're in a software field or a digital product, you can hire what's typically called a BDR, or business development rep. They dial, and then they hand you off to ideally a better salesperson, right? So some people combine the BDR and the salesperson. Some people split them apart. It depends on what you see in your funnel. And so if you're seeing a lot of unqualified sort of chaff in the top of your funnel, BDR might be a good investment. If you're seeing a little bit more qualified in your funnel, you may want to just put them right to a salesperson, and you don't need the BDR. Make sense? Awesome. Scaling revenue. This is a very, very fast slide. Can you guys all read that first bullet point? You're laughing. You won't be if you don't do the first bullet. You have to make a profit. Not week 1, but month 1. Yeah, just ask WeWork. Oh my God. Also, a few other lessons there. Here's the thing. These stories you hear about people who run at this massive deficit, like, ooh, Uber just became profitable. That's not what you're doing. Don't do that. Because for every Uber, there's a bunch of people who are now IT managers that all want to talk about the startup they had that failed. Make a profit. Start small. Grow in a measurable way. Follow sound business principles. Anybody who tells you something that sounds too good to be true, it is. There is no secret shortcut except to avoid going like this through your path. Go like this by doing the kinds of things we talked about today. Cut through the noise in your marketing. Be diligent and specific in your go-to-market and your products. Find a way to acquire those first salespeople. Or for your first customers, focus 100% of your energy on that. Then go. Until you have customers, you don't have a business. You just have a hobby. Yeah.
So if you're a technical person and you're trying to start your own company, at what point you start thinking about stop doing the technical part and find somebody to do the instead of trying to do the technical, hiring senior developers, for example?
Yeah, it's a great question. So if you're a technical person, when do you think about maybe you pulling back from the technical work and hiring somebody like an architect or developer, somebody who can continue moving that forward? I apologize if my answer sounds a little cheeky because I don't mean it to be. When you can afford to do it. Go get those first customers. Technical people are not cheap, typically, if not good ones, right? There are some opportunities if you're building software or web products to use resources from different parts of the world. If you vet them and you have a good relationship and they can be successful. We've had great luck with some developers in the Philippines and other places. So, I mean, it absolutely can be done. Still some risk. They need a lot of management sometimes, a lot of really good requirements, things like that, right? So you got to work through some of that at the beginning. But I would say when you can afford it and if you want to. I know some technical folks, they started the company so they can do that. Right? They don't want to pull back. They want somebody to go do sales. They don't want to do sales. They don't want to do marketing. They want somebody to go do that, right? So it all depends. But it's a great question. All right. Last few slides. Yeah.
On that note, so what's your strategy for startup capital? You know, like when can you afford that kind of thing? And should you look for, should you generate your own money?
You can start almost any of the things that we've talked about for $5,000 or less. And if you want to talk more in detail about how to do that, how to bootstrap it, I'm happy to do that. And when we have all day, we go into that a little bit more, so I apologize. But yeah, you don't need a ton to get started. Because remember, it's all about what is that first X number of customers, right? If you build it in a way so that your first customers bring you $2,000 a month in revenue, now you got $24,000 a year in startup capital, right? And so you can build off of that. And so sometimes that's an opportunity to not quit your job, find a way to build it so you're building it on Saturdays, right? Launch it with a few customers in your network, right? And balance that for a little bit until you get enough coming in to where you can say, okay, I'm ready to go, right? I'm ready to double down. Make sense? All right. This, if you take no other slide, because I'm going to move kind of quick through the last few slides, but this slide is the one. What will break when you're scaling? Every one of these things has broken in Pragmatic Works. Sometimes in spectacular fashion. Sometimes this week. I was on a call at 4 in the morning the other day. Communication. As you add people, they all have to talk to each other. People aren't good at that. I don't know if you've noticed that. By the way, look where you're all sitting. Nobody's next to each other. I'm a firm believer at tech conferences we should only have the back 3 rows. Because that way everyone can sit in the back, but you have to sit together. You have to socialize and meet people. Your people will break. They will burn out. They will not self-regulate. They will work 80 hours a week and then come to you and be like, I'm having a mental breakdown. I can't keep working 600 hours a month. And you'll be like, why are you working 600 hours a month? I didn't know about that. Well, because of this thing. Oh, I created this problem? Let's fix that right now. Your processes will break. Guess why? Because you don't build processes when you're trying to get going. There's no process. And you're going to sit down and be like, we should have a process to do this. And everybody's going to go, boo, process. We have to go, especially your salespeople, right? They're going to be like, can I just go sell? Every minute in this meeting is costing me money. And that's how you know you hired the right salesperson, by the way. If they're like, yeah, let's talk about process, fire them. Fire that salesperson like right away. No, goodbye. It's just a test, right? Just call them in. That's how you screen them. Quality. When we work faster and longer hours, do we create the best thing? No, we do not. We do not. Morale. Tired people who are being pushed to their limits are not in the best mental state all the time. And it's okay to run your team that hard for a short period of time. Talk to them about it. Let them know it's only for a short period of time. Make sure they know there's an end date. Make sure they know what we're trying to accomplish. And then give them a break. Give them a break. They deserve it. Give them a couple days off. Send them on a vacation. Do something, right? You're going to have so much money from this new startup, you can do whatever you want. Rent out Disneyland for their families. You guys got this. You can do it. I have faith in you. The last thing is patience. Guess who struggles more with this than anybody else in our company? I don't know if you've noticed, but I'm sort of like a go, don't get in my way type of personality. And so occasionally when my team brings me very well-founded reasons why we have to go a little bit slower or take a different tact, I'm like, meh. I don't like it. And I throw a temper tantrum and they leave me alone for 45 minutes and then they come back. But everybody's patience will wear thin if you don't triage all these other things. Everybody can handle stuff breaking. People get it. Get through it and then take a pause, fix it, and keep going. It's battlefield medicine. It's battlefield medicine. You're not going to have the plastic surgeon do the stitch so the scar is perfect. You're going to close it up. You're going to reload. You're going to get that person functional, working, get their mental state positive, and help them be successful. And that's why it's so important that you bring people on who can handle that. Okay? So let's talk about what's going to keep you from success. 3 things. Wrong focus, wrong team, wrong mentality. That's it. Everything falls into one of those buckets. You got to have the right focus. Your job is to lead. There's a quote that's often attributed to Steve Jobs, and he didn't actually say it, but it's if you want to be nice and liked, don't be a leader, go sell ice cream. Everybody's not going to be your best friend. If you're starting a company to have a club, bad idea. And I've seen that. I've seen 4 friends go start a company together and hate each other in 6 months. Why? Because somebody's got to be in charge. 4 people cannot be in charge of anything. It's like saying, I have 3 number 1 priorities. No, you don't. You have 3 things that you talk about. You have to drive. You got to drive. It's your job. So you got to be ready for that. And that'll wear you out, which means you got to take care of yourself. There's a whole module in here I didn't include on self-care, which is super important. If you guys want to talk about that offline, I'm happy to, because it's very, very important. And it's something I neglected for a long time, so it's really close to me. Do what you're great at and help everybody else focus on the things that are the most important to them. The right team. How many of you feel like building a really good culture would be important in your startup? Yeah, it is. Not right now. You don't have time. Here's how you build a good culture in a very small startup. You treat people well, you treat everybody with respect, you communicate, you set expectations, you hold people accountable, You reward people that are doing great, and you get people that aren't off the bus. That is the foundation for every other good culture. You can add to that over time. As your company develops more of an identity, as you discover more of what you want, as you think about what things are important to you as a company and your values. But when you're trying to get your first 10 customers, you don't have time to do culture workshops and do offsites to build these things. It's just you're not there yet. A good culture is incredibly important. We've seen companies that have had culture failures and lost so much, right? It's really important. But don't let it become a distraction when you're trying to get your first 10, 15, 20 customers. Get traction. Traction gives you everything else. Gives you the opportunity to create everything else. Does that make sense? Good. The right mentality. This thing you're thinking about doing, or that you are already doing, it's the hardest thing you'll ever do. It's the hardest thing you'll ever do. It's also the greatest thing you'll ever do. It really is. Because one day you'll sit back and go, wow, that was a hell of a year, but man, do I have a lot to be grateful for. Not just what you've created, but what you've learned. And relationships you'll build with your team, things that will strengthen you mentally as you go through them. Here's the thing. One of my favorite sayings is, nothing changes if nothing changes. You don't like your 9 to 5? Nothing changes if nothing changes. It may just mean you need a new 9 to 5. And that's okay. I don't think entrepreneurship is for everybody. Don't get me wrong. But nothing changes if nothing changes. And that includes, by the way, when you're running the company. Every couple of months, I look at myself and I'm like, what needs to change? I try to look really hard at me and the whole rest of the company. My team loves that, by the way. They're always super excited when they get a call from me going, I was thinking today. And they're like, oh. They're like, my calendar's already really busy today. Can we do this later? You got to banish the fear. Fear and doubt will be the most harmful thing coming at you. Once you decide to do this, there's no reason to be afraid, because either you're going to quit or you're not. And if you've decided to do it and you're not going to quit, what's there to be afraid of? You're going to finish. Now that you know that, and we got the quitting crap out of the way, there's nothing to be afraid of. There's a lot to be uncertain about and wonder and need to learn and need to get answers to. That's fine. You guys are so smart. You know how many answers to things you've found in your career? Just because this is a new thing doesn't mean it's any harder. It's just different. You got this. You just have to remember to tell yourself that. It's really important to build confidence. By the way, I got this from a coffee mug on a site called Coffee and Motivation, where they have incredibly hilarious mugs that I'm not affiliated with. Some of them are very vulgar, and so I don't recommend those. But this is one of the greatest ones. The other one I'm a huge fan of says, I believe in myself like Kanye believes in Kanye. And it is really my life motto. But confidence is super important, but so is humility. And they can coexist. Arrogance and humility cannot coexist. Confidence is, I've done my homework. I believe in what I'm doing. I'm confident in the decision I'm making. I know there might be people out there that are better than me, but that's okay. I'll learn from them. I'm going to drive and run my game. I'm going to run my game. And that's what I do. Be confident. Make decisions. Be decisive. Guess what? It doesn't matter how long you wait to make decisions, you're going to make the same percentage of them right or wrong as if you decide quickly. Wasting time. Have you guys noticed that pretty much everything we've talked about keeps you from wasting time or money? Everything. And so when I talk about cutting out the noise and shrinking it down, when you want a decision framework, when you want to know, what should I do? Are you going to waste time or money? Work that out first. Avoid that like the plague. All right. Remember I told you earlier, top 10 tips? Okay, here we go. How are we doing on time? What time is this session technically done? 5 minutes ago? Okay, lightning round. We are really, truly almost done, guys. I apologize. Go to market. Build offerings and solutions that you know your customers want. Do not launch a company to sell a catalog. Do not scattershot 15 offerings into the market and hope that a couple of them land and you make some money. That wastes time and what? Money. It's a huge waste. Marketing. Stop talking about things that don't matter. Don't create noise. If your solution solves this problem, you talk about that until people scream at you to please, dear God, stop talking about it. Do not talk about this. Just talk about this. You will be known for this. For this. So much so that we almost couldn't get customers to stop buying the quick start thing that I told you guys about. Because after a while, that's actually a terrible business idea to sell time a week at a time. And we had to go beyond that. And they were like, no, we just want the quick start thing. And we're like, no, we don't do that anymore. Right? Like, you gotta do it for real. And then we did it for like 40 customers because that's what we had to do. Focus on the things that matter. Hire the best sales team you can afford and pay them for performance. Bar none. For your team, a good hire will keep proving you right. Every week, every month, you'll go, man, I'm really glad I hired Kathleen. I'm really glad Diego's on my team. A good hire, you will feel that every week, every month. If you become ambivalent about somebody on your team, that's a bit of a red flag, candidly, especially with a small team. That's a red flag. I'm not going to tell you that person needs to go, but it needs to be looked at. Why do you feel that way? Make sure you're getting paid on time and that you can forecast your cash flow. I don't know how many entrepreneurs I talk to and I go, how much cash are you going to get in from customers in the next 90 days? And they're like, I have to go look that up. That is the wrong answer. You should always know. I can tell you right now, and I haven't looked at our accounting, exactly within about $1,000 how much cash we expect to get in the next 90 days. You know why? Because what's my number one job? Bring in money. If that's my number one job, I better be freaking on top of it, right? Know that. Forecasting it, by the way, super easy. Run a report in QuickBooks. It's done. Last but not least, one of the things that you really want to do is focus on supporting you. So you're going to focus a lot on building this team, building these products, building these things, and very quickly, you will be tired. Your family needs to know what you're going to do. Your friends, your social circle needs to know what you're going to do. They need to know you might check out for a while you're making this happen, and that needs to be okay. Just tell them to get over it. Not your family, talk to them. Your friends, tell them to get over it. I've literally in my life never told my wife to just get over it. That's why she's still my wife. Think about things like surrounding yourself with a squad of people that are doing similar things. Find a local entrepreneur group. They're all over the place. If you can't find one in your area, let me know. I'll find you one. Think about getting a coach that can help you with a particular area. If you're looking for sales, find somebody who's good at that, right? If you're looking for somebody for a specific area, let me know and I'll point you in the right direction, right? Build a support structure. The worst thing you can do is do this on your own. When people climb Mount Everest, nobody does it by themselves. Nobody's like throwing 3 sandwiches in a backpack and taking off, right? There's like 50 people for 1 or 2 people. Why is that? Because it's hard. It's freaking hard. You can't do it on your own. You got to have a support structure. And I told you this thing is going to be the hardest thing that you ever do. And so you got to have a support structure. And so this is the last thing I have for you because this is how I'm going to kickstart your support structure. So this is a sample. This is actually a slide from my other session tomorrow. I apologize. I didn't update it for this one. I have about 40 resources that I typically give out in this 2-day thing. You guys don't have to take a picture of this. These are downloads I'm going to give you that are going to quick start a bunch of this stuff for you. They're templates, lists of questions to ask yourself, things to think about as you go through thinking about products. They're ways to analyze your calendar to see where you're spending your time, ways to assess yourself. This stuff is all free. I'm just giving it to you guys. There's no sales pitch here, okay? So I'm going to be super clear. They're all downloadable. They'll all be available over like the next 90 days, right? I'm having them all sort of refreshed based on all the latest stuff that we did. All you need to do to get them is go to that link, and it's just a form. Just put your email address in, and I'll know you were here, and I'll put you on the list to get them when we finish getting the refresh done. You should get the first batch of them next week, okay? That'll also give you my email address and all my contact information, so if you want to chat, if you want to talk about anything, if you have questions, if you want to follow up, you absolutely can. All right, guys. Thank you so much.